Reporting. Thank you. Back with us now, former Democratic Party chairman and from Washington, D.C., A. Scott Bolden, also former South Carolina Lieutenant Governor Andre Bowers. So House Speaker Paul Ryan today got some fellow Republicans on a conference call. They talked about Friday's funding deadline. They talked about the chances of a health care vote, which sounds slim at this point. But, Andre, listen to what one congressman told us here at CNN about this apparently 15-minute Paul Ryan conference call, and I'm quoting, "They were short on details and didn't take any questions because they said they had to assume the call was being recorded by somebody and it would get leaked. It was so content-free, it was embarrassing." So, Andre, what was the point of this call?
I don't know. I guess it was to kind of get the bullets out, at least what they want to address next week. I would say they need to address, if they think they have leaks, they need to address those because they've got it. But I guess circling back around more than anything, it shows you there is so many different groups within the Republican Party now, and that's why they've got problems with health care getting it passed. You've got a bunch of different groups, some that are extremely conservative, some are more moderate, and so there's no real conformity right now around, unified mission, and so they've got problems within their own party. I mean, that's part of growing and being, having a success in the last election. But he, as the leader, has got to come around and bring those folks together. Have a unified.
How do you govern?
Well, right now he's not doing what he needs to be doing. I shouldn't say that. He's not having the success that he should be having, given the number of people that he has. And so somehow he's got to have a prayer meeting and get these folks together and say, look, here are our common things that we all believe in. Let's work on those first. And things like health care, let's hammer it out a little longer and not be in such a hurry to pass such a major piece of legislation. I think that was a flawed from the start, way back when they first did that, to put a time frame that it had to be done by April, I think was wrong. I think it was premature, and they should have started out the gate with something easier.
So, Scott, your reaction?
Yeah, Andre, you can say that. He's not doing what he's supposed to do. Some would call that a Freudian slip, but the reality is this is a GOP party that is out of control. The Republicans, you have a businessman who is the president of the United States, got a lot of goals and objectives, doesn't now know how to achieve them, and now you're doing conference calls whereby you're hitting out pronouncements by the GOP, but there's no substantive discussion about it. The problem is his 100 days is coming up. He wants to do tax reform. He wants to do health care reform because he's promised that to his supporters and voters. And yet at the same time, he's got to get a funding budget through where he's going to insist on the border wall. Maybe not, maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. But the reality is those are three big legislative packages that he would like to get done in 1 week. And Washington just doesn't work that way. Welcome to Washington, D.C., Donald Trump. You asked for it, you got it.
Andre, does this seem troublingly familiar to you in terms of how the last health care bill was handled? A lot of behind-the-scenes discussion, rush deadline, then a caucus that seems to be in the dark. It's all happening at this level of just one leader from this caucus talking to one leader from that caucus, making deals that the rest of their group may or may not like.
You know, from an outsider looking in, it seems to me they need to slow down, pump the brakes, find one piece of legislation they want to work on and get that done. Having so many irons in the fire right now when they're major pieces of legislation, I think is wrong. I served a House one in the House, one in the Senate, and two as Lieutenant Governor. And I know when we picked pieces of legislation that we really wanted as a caucus, we went after that hard and heavy. But to be so splintered when you have such major pieces that are very divisive, I think they're taking on too much.
So, Scott, the thing is here, you've got health care, you talked about taxes as well. These are issues that affect every single American. So, I mean, I don't want to let Democrats off the hook here. At what point do Democrats take the reins and try to be proactive in coming up with some solutions with their Republican colleagues?
Well, I think that's very important. I think the Democrats are prepared and willing and able to do that. The problem is, I don't think that the Republicans who have the House, Senate, and White House have done enough outreach, or really any outreach, on these major issues where they have major differences. The missing component to health care and tax reform and infrastructure and a lot of these issues that the Trump White House wants to get done is that there has not been outreach to the Democrats. Now, the Democrats want want to fix Obamacare. The Republicans want to repair it. They want to repeal it. Now, if they move off repealing it, then we could probably have a dialogue about fixing it, but they're obsessed with eliminating Obamacare. And so it gets tough to cut a deal when there's a wall between two parties whereby they are non-starters and no one's bending now, or blinking, if you will. Now, the reality is that maybe the Democrats and Republicans can get together on this funding bill. Maybe we can do something with Obamacare if there's outreach to the Democrats and we try to repair it. And maybe we can even get some discussions about jobs and infrastructure. But you got to do it one at a time. You need some adults in the room, and you need real leadership. Right now, this is a rudderless ship. And quite frankly, whether it's Democrat or Republican, this is an American issue now and an American leadership crisis headed up by Donald Trump. It's got to get fixed.
I've heard you both talk about the importance of leadership. Andre, how big of a problem is it for President Trump, this lack of progress on a signature campaign promise to repeal and replace Obamacare?
Well, keep in mind, he's taken on a lot. This is not quite the first 100 days, and he's trying to upright the ship, so it's not just that he took on Democrats, he took on Republicans too. There's a lot of folks within the body he's trying to work with now that were adamantly against him, never Trumpers. And so he's now having to try to work with these folks, but he wanted to drain the swamp. And so there's a lot of folks, I hope he pushes for term limits. I think that's the most major piece of legislation that can change our country more than anything else, is to make these folks not make it a career and a lifetime, but go up a couple terms and then step out. But the moderate Democrats need to reach over the line too and try to work with these folks, because health care is an American issue. It's not a partisan issue. We've got to get past this, whether it's called Obamacare. We know folks need help. We've got to find a way to bring costs down. And so I'm hoping at some point in time, whether it's in the president, whether it's the Republicans, whether it's the Democrats in the House and Senate, they'll work together. But you didn't see that in the Senate just last week on a most fair and reasonable Supreme Court justice when they were obstructionists, instead of passing a guy that should have overwhelmingly been confirmed. And so you're going to see
Go back to Merrick Garland, though. Go back to Merrick Garland,
exactly.
Andre. So,
Don't rewrite history, Andre.
I know we could talk about this back and forth, but we got to leave it there for now. Andre Bauer and A. Scott Bolden, thank you both. Up next.